First of all, I always believed the UK, after Maastricht, was set on a course that was different from the rest of the European Union. I did say at the time of Maastricht that Maastricht and the Single European Act and all the following acts were a huge departure from what the UK had joined. They became a political organisation, a creation of a state, and I said the UK won't be able to tolerate that no matter what. I thought that would happen after I'd left politics, but it was accelerated dramatically by the crash, I think, which told everybody this system didn't work. The last 3 years since the referendum have been a dire period, and a dire period for the British public and also for politicians. It's been one of the worst periods I can remember. Having had a very substantial vote and a majority, a good majority, to say that we should leave, the fight back from those, mostly it seems to me, in what I call pretty influential positions, has been astonishing, really. Their refusal to accept democracy has been, I think, the biggest eye-opener of the lot, and tells you very much that the attitude of some people is that democracy is okay as long as it's in your direction. The moment it isn't, then you don't like it. I remember absolutely being confronted by an individual who said that he wasn't prepared. This is the morning after. He wasn't prepared to be told what to do by those who were too poor, too old, and too stupid to listen to. And that set the tone for the next 3 years. That has been very much the attack on the Remain side. It was miserable in Parliament because we ended up having a stupid election in 2017, which I told her not to have, Mrs. May. She went ahead with it. We ended up with no real majority, and the result was that we were trapped in this building night after night, losing votes and bringing the whole of democracy into contempt. I think by the end of the day the British people were absolutely sick of it. We sort of released ourselves finally in the last election to get a majority. So it's been miserable, it's been anti-democratic, and I think it's been quite, in a sense, revealing about the attitude of quite influential people to democracy. I have a very simple principle in life, which is when America and Britain are together, the world is a safer place. When we've been parted, I think the world has been less safe. When America's gone it alone on things like Vietnam, invariably these things have gone wrong, but as long as the UK is there to complement and discuss and sometimes dampen down the immediate reaction of the states, then I think that partnership works. It's worked endlessly when under stress. So I think first and foremost the relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom is a relationship on which the world has essentially developed in the modern time. I also think that therefore as we leave we should not think of markets any longer as dedicated to one area. We've been locked to the European Union, which has made our food more expensive, which has made our products over-regulated at times, and in essence a market which is now really going pretty flat. And we should see ourselves as a nation that now re-embraces what I call the big growth areas of the world, America, the Far East, the Commonwealth. These are all areas that have got real potential to grow and are growing at the moment, but far faster than the European Union. And that will require us to be quite light on our feet. Number one priority is to get some kind of trade arrangement with the United States. After all, the US produces everything that Europe produces, and in many cases a lot cheaper. And so what would we do for all those blue-collar voters that voted for the Conservative Party wanting change? You want to deliver some very quick wins to them. One is cheaper food and cheaper things that they have to buy, and I think having a deal with America would also gee up the European Union to recognize that they're now in a squeeze, and I think that's important in negotiation. The decision on Huawei was a wrong decision. I think that the government, whilst it was faced with a dilemma because of Huawei's involvement in 4G, which was the fault of the Blair government at the time, and civil servants, who didn't actually tell ministers that they were setting contracts with Huawei. But if you look very carefully, who are Huawei? Huawei are an organization set up by the Chinese government. And although they look to be in the private sector, the truth is they've had huge subsidies by the Chinese government to get into this area of marketplace. And the Chinese set themselves the target as a nation of dominating this area of business in the world. They now, I think, account for about a third of all of our communications systems such as 4G and 3G, etc. And the result of all of that is that they are now set to dominate 5G. Britain taking the decision isn't just about our relationship with the States. it's also a problem because we may yet be able to, in technology, just about handle Huawei in some of the more excessive areas, although I have to say I doubt that even for Britain. But the problem for our country is not that at all. This decision will now encourage other countries, far less capable than the UK, to accept Huawei into their systems. This is why Huawei was so desperate to hold on to the UK, because that is the reason why their markets and their money is going to come from all these other places. And so I think America is worried on that front enormously. And I think, you know, your greatest ally with the greatest reach in the free world, you need to listen to them on this. But not just them, because our Five Eyes group, made up of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America and ourselves, of all of those, only the UK has thought of going ahead with Huawei. All the others have banned it. And bear in mind, Australia, who has a very big commercial dependency on Chinese purchasing, has actually banned Huawei from their system. So if they can do it, I don't see why we can't. So I think it was a difficult choice, but I think there's more yet to come, and we may yet see the government have to put in place a proper target to get rid of Huawei from their systems altogether and all Chinese involvement. They said there's no Russian involvement. There should be no Chinese involvement. I'm not anti-China. I'm just, you know, this is a country that is in the middle of bearing down on 1 million Uyghurs, Uyghur Muslims, brutally putting them into detention camps. It's been smashing apart the rights of Tibetans for ages. It's been very anti-Christians in China. It's an authoritarian organization. If you cross the line against them, they deal with you. This is not a free state, and that is our problem. And China at the moment has behaved in a way that means they don't stick to the rules-based agenda of the world when it comes to currency manipulations, comes to subsidies, when it comes to the way in which business and trade is bought, and their treatment, I think, of some African nations has been appalling. So with all of that, you have to question the decision to go ahead with Huawei at this point. But I would accept it if the government had a plan to drive out Huawei from the system over a period of maybe 3, maybe 4 years. The United Kingdom is a proud and independent country. We are allied with the United States. We're allied with lots of other countries too around the world. But at the same time, we also recognize that we need friends and we want to trade with those friends. And as we come out of the European Union, we are wanting to trade with the rest of the world. America is the single biggest market in that sense in the world in terms of its reach. And I think we need to be doing business with them. You know, we have all the advantages in the States. Things that are forgotten about already, right? We are the single biggest investor into the United States of all other countries, including China. Okay? They are the single biggest investor into the United Kingdom of all other countries, including China. So we already have this incredibly strong relationship. Between New York and London, we dominate the global financial services sector. And Britain leads the world in what I call educational and scientific services. Literally, what a fantastic opportunity for us to be in the market in America. And the honest truth is, American products, by and large, are generally cheaper than European products. And as a result of that, you deliver to a very harassed group in lower incomes far better chance to have their cost of living reduced and thus their incomes increased. So those two things are very important. So we shouldn't turn away and sniff at that. And it's invariably those who make this allegation about being the 51st state of the United States. Well, what were we when we were a member of the European Union? You know, we were the 28th state of the European Union heading for a statehood. I wasn't happy about that. No, we are what we are going to be, which is an independent, proud, United Kingdom, which once influenced the whole world from free trade through to parliamentary democracy and the rule of law and habeas corpus. They've missed us. We're back. We want a trade deal. It is going to be very different if they do it properly from what we have at the moment. At the moment, we are bound by the total acceptance of the rules of the European Union, not just for trade with the European Union, but for trade with everybody else. And this is the thing that was forgotten by everybody else. I've got no problem with businesses and companies making sure they have the right regulations for their product when they sell to the European Union. But I object to the idea the European Union dictates to what our regulations over products should be when we do a deal with the United States. So my answer is you need to stay flexible about this. The UK needs to decide where its regulations should fall, how much divergence there should be, influenced by the trade deals we do around other parts of the world and by what we think of what we should do in the UK. And on that basis, then selling to the European Union, meet the European standards. Sell to America, you have to meet American standards and vice versa. I think that's how we should see these. The red line would be we are not in the European Union, so let's not pretend that we're in the European Union. The benefits of being out can only be gained if we're flexible enough to say we'll trade with you but not be dominated by you. If we end up aligning across everything, then I have a very big question, what the hell was this all about? The big prize is to be able to strike trade deals around the world, and many other countries are desperate to do it. Japan is really keen to do it. And by the way, they hate their trade deal with the European Union because they were bullied in it. We should recognize we will now attempt to bully us. But there was a very good piece the other day written by the editor of Built, who pointed out that the UK now stands on the threshold of absolute and total competitiveness compared to the European Union by reaching out to the developed and undeveloped world. In other words, to the growth markets of the world. The UK will align itself more with them than it will with the European Union, and that's a problem for the European Union. And I end this by simply saying the European Union is just waking up to the fact when the UK leaves the European Union, it's the equivalent of about 17 or 18 of the smallest countries leaving at one go. That leaves them about 10 other nations in the European Union. Good luck with that. I'm not worried about it, because I think if it has to happen, it happens. I don't think it will happen, because I think the European Union is desperate about this. Germany is teetering around the edge of recession. Italy is in deep trouble with huge borrowing. Spain, you go around the European Union and there are real big problems. We're outgrowing them at the moment. It's not dramatic growth, but we're certainly outgrowing them, and forecast by the IMF the other day to outstrip the European Union over the next few years anyway. They sell more goods to us. I think the deficit is 100 billion, so there's 100 billion's worth of goods coming in from the European Union to the UK, more than we sell them. Cars, machine tools, farm products from France, Germany with all their mechanical stuff. And the answer is, what do you want? Do you want to throw all that away? Because frankly, the tariff system already would benefit us. So if there were tariffs up in the UK, we would net up, I think, about £13 billion. And as our currency has fallen, you can add another £12 billion to that as well. So the answer is, the European Union would suffer very badly. And they're waking up to that. So a lot of this is bluster, a lot of this is scene setting by them, but we need to hold firm and tell them it's your choice, actually. If you want to do deals and business with the UK, then get off your platform and start talking to us as equal partners, not threatening us and trying to bully us. It won't work, and we should be prepared to go on that basis. If we get this right, I think the UK will be back on the global circuit. I think that we will be an incredibly valuable member of the World Trade Organization. I think the UK has the capacity to revitalize the concept of free trade. And bear in mind that free trade and freer trade has done more to reduce poverty around the world than any other political device. Communism, socialism, you name it. None of them have reduced poverty in the way that free trade, in other words, trade between nations, reducing the cost of products, reducing the overall cost of food, gives to the poorest people the greatest possibility of a decent life. No communist country has ever delivered that in that sense. It is in fact free markets that do that. And so our argument should be to argue and to persuade other countries that may feel in any way that we shouldn't be in this. And America has flirted with the idea of not having such a big driver on free trade. Well, we are the country that can persuade the Americans to stay with the system. We can make changes to it, but we're the country that's gone missing. The UK is the biggest free trader in the whole world. We believe in free trade more than anything else. We set up this trading system. The concept of the free market is an Adam Smith creation. It's a UK creation, and it dominates the world, and we don't want to see it go under. So now we have to make the case for it, and at last, free from the shackles of the European Union's managed market, we can now make the case for actually free trade, which maybe the European Union may open up to one day and discover. Send an upbeat message about the UK. Allow people to write who believe actually in the UK, that have not given up on our country. You know, this country is a phenomenal country. You just cast your eye back over history and people say you're just a little country. This is not a little country. It may be an island, but if you took the UK out of global history, it would be devastating. Think of all the things that have now arrived in the UK, not just the use of English, which is the language across the world, but the whole idea of the concept of the free market. It's a British concept. The concept of habeas corpus in the modern sense these days, in other words, no arrest without charge and trial. More and more countries have to adopt that. It was the UK that had that as a basic principle of its legal system. The concept of democracy, parliamentary democracy in the modern era, is very much a British invention, taken over into the States, modified, but essentially a very modern UK concept of development. And then you go around the world and look at all the other aspects of scientific and general well-being that have been introduced by the UK, not least of which, of course, every sport pretty much that you play was probably started on the playing fields of British schools here. We may not win all these things any longer, but my God, most people enjoy them, and it was the UK that pretty much kind of invented most of them, not all of them, I accept, but most of them, from football through tennis and all the big sports, golf and everything else, all originated here. So my point is the UK has been unbelievably influential in the rest of the world and still remains so today. We've kind of lost sight of just how important we are to most other countries out there. So if people think that's a small country, I want to know what a big country looks like.